Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time. I'm going to start, and hopefully you guys will learn something. So I'm recording this, so if someone needs to hop off, you'll get the recording afterwards. All right, just give it a minute or two. Alrighty. Okay, so let's start. Okay, the goal of this webinar is just review the DFS compliance, Department of Financial Services, everyone that's here or everyone that is going to listen to this. This is for anyone that has a license from the Department of Financial Services and things what to expect. So who are we? So first of all, my name is Slim Levinger. I started SpareEye, and what we do is we focus on compliance and helping IT companies and companies that need to be compliant manage their compliance program. So we monitor it, we take care of it. So if anyone has any questions, you can reach out afterwards, and take it from there. All right. Why does the DFS care about security? So there are a bunch of different compliance for different industries. Why is the DFS so on top of it, and why do you have to file every year that you're doing your specific things for security? The reason why is because in finance, we're dealing with a lot of important information that is interesting or valuable for hackers. That's A, and B is as well, the revenue of your customers. So if someone gets into an insurance company, they can see just about how much people are worth, right? So it's valuable for them to see who their next target is. Aside from that, there's also like account numbers or documents, social security numbers, things that are of interest for people that are out there. So in general, they are higher and more susceptible to attacks. So what the DFS did, they compiled a roadmap, a bunch of requirements, going through of what is required, and hopefully we'll go through them real quick. And so we're going to know what to do. The differences between the DFS also and a bunch of different departments. For example, HIPAA compliance, the difference would be the DFS is more than a law. They have a department for it, and they actually audit it. We've gone through audits, and it's pretty strict, and hopefully we'll touch about that as well, how an audit looks like. So to start off, there's three categories that you may fall into, and the middle one, which is a limited exemption, that is the primary of most companies. So most companies will fall into that class, and just so you understand, fully exempt means that they are out of business or they're not operating. They're not here. They're not. They're not out there. A limited exemption is companies that are they have one of the three of the following. They have less than 20 employees, and this can be W-2s, 1099s, but collectively there are under 20 employees. They also are doing less than 7.5 million in gross annual revenue, as well as they're worth less than $50 million in assets. So if a company has one of the three, they qualify for limited exemption. And that makes sense because they are less of a target than a Class A company that is doing a lot more in revenue. So just so you see, so two examples, inactive members. Over here, the three ways limited exemption. And Class A is over $20 million in revenue or over 2,000 employees. That is the primary scenarios of falling into those categories, but obviously there are differences in each thing that may qualify you differently. Meaning in the limited exemption, which is 500.19, there's A, B, and C. Most people that I'm dealing with fall under A. There are differences, but the other ones are very unique cases. So what are the requirements and what are we exempt from? So the reason why I'm going to talk about the limited exemption is because most of the people have to do this, and I'm using it as a baseline. So someone that is not does not qualify for a limited exemption does need to up their game and they need to do a lot more. And for those, you can reach out and to see the differences. So the first thing that every company has to do is a risk assessment. This is 500.2. So the DFS wants you to evaluate every year. So for IT companies, just so you know, there's no specific framework that you have to follow for a risk assessment. As long as you are doing a risk assessment, you are fine. As long as it's documented, you will be fine. Um, when there's an audit, they will ask you they want to see it over time, how your risk assessment goes and how it improved over time. So that is um, as much as the risk assessment goes, but it's something that needs to be thorough. It can't be just in theory, and it needs to be documented. The policy and procedures is just a handbook, and again, I'm sure most of you are familiar in some capacity of how this looks. Just an easy example would be your passwords need to be 8 characters long. You need to change it every half a year, and you have to have two-step verification. Those are, as an IT company, IT companies in general have some sort of rule of thumb that they do, and what we want to do is just make sure that it's all documented. So in case of an audit, you can actually show that here is my policy and these are the rules that I'm following to. So access control. So the MFA is something that they put on. I think I put this twice by mistake, but access control is super important. Is to understand least privileges. So least privileges would mean if you have someone processing certain things, or they shouldn't be able to see something that they're not supposed to, whatever that means for you. But you should not be able to see more things. So that would be access control. MFA went into in November of 2024. It went into effect that you have to have MFA all over. So I want to point this out because this is something that we see when we're helping companies. Is from the IT side, most of the companies are doing great. Their email has MFA. Their whatever they were using from the IT perspective is great. Where it's lacking is from companies that have, if there's a mortgage company or insurance company that has their own software that they use. Typically, it's an online portal. It could be Accords. It could be a bunch of different software. The IT company does not generally have access to that, and we just have to make sure that you have MFA there as well. Just pointing that out. Awareness training. So this has to happen as well every year. This is also part of the requirements that went into effect recently. The more we know, the more we educate, we can prevent hacks, and that is primarily what the DFS wants to see. Things that we do, and I think it's important to do, is first of all have live training. Someone come down, the IT guy, ask the IT guy for someone just to educate the people. At the end of the day, most people are not tech savvy, at least in what I'm seeing. So what we want to do is just make sure that people know what phishing is, and even though I know what it is, not necessarily they do it. So another idea that we do is phishing simulations. So we send out fake emails. At this time, I think most IT companies provide some sort of solution for that. So do reach out and have that done. Again, everything that you're doing, keep it for documentation because it's going to be vital when it comes to an audit. Third-party management. So the third-party management is 500.11, which is essentially you have to have a policy of how you're dealing with third parties. So that could be just an agreement, or that can be a form of a questionnaire that you're asking them, like what data do you collect of me and what information you have. And you have to go by your policy. So again, by the way, whenever we talk about policy and procedures, you can design it the way it works for you in accordance to your assessment. So meaning you have the DFS gives you the ability to decide, like, this is something that I could do or I can do. And as long as it's documented in the assessment, you're fine. And then the policy and procedures is your handbook of how you deal with certain things. So they will hold you accountable to your own standards. So if you write in your handbook, in your policy and procedures, that you're doing something, in reality you are not, then you are violating your policy, and essentially you can end up in a fine. Multi-factor authentication we touched upon, which is, again, you should have MFA all over. And notice to superintendent. So this is for organizations. You have to file every year, April 15. You have to just file that you are adhering to this policy. Then this doesn't matter if you're fully exempt, limited exempt, or um, you're just a Class A company. You always have to file something, and it's relatively easy. If anyone has questions, you can reach out on how to do it if you haven't done so in the past. Data retention. So this is going to come in November 1st. It's going to become a challenge because understanding what is retention and what not. So the DFS does not want you to keep information that is non-relevant to you. So if I was a client to you 7 years ago, awesome. Okay. And I'm not a client anymore. Why do you need my data? So if you do need the data for specific reasons and it makes sense, okay, keep it. But if you don't need the data, you have to purge it. You have to figure out a way to, get rid of that data. Data retention is a challenge from the IT side and from the company side because we have to decide what is something that we could delete and get rid of and what is important, as well as how do we do this effectively. So there are methods out there from the IT side that would be like Microsoft Purview, for example, where you can set up a policy if a folder hasn't been touched or it goes through a certain threshold, it should be deleted or moved into a specific folder that can be marked for deletion. From the operator's perspective, so if you have a software where you're doing claims or you're just doing applications from, so on that software, each software is going to be different, but it's something that you have to bring up to them to understand how we could actually listen to this policy because it comes to a certain date that we have to get rid of that data. Again, at the moment, it's not enforced, but it's something that do keep in mind that it's going to become enforced, and it's something that you have to have a policy, and you have to listen to your policy about that. So over here we have a board. I'm not sure if everyone can see, but if you can zoom in, you'll see on the left side we have over here the exemptions. So when we are exempt, we don't have to do these, but we still have to do the things on the right. So these are the things that we still have to do. So everything I went through are things that fall into the right side. However, if you're a Class A company or you don't qualify for a limited exemption, you're going to have to do a lot more things. You're going to have CISO, basically someone responsible for that security program, and you have to do vulnerability scanning, more monitoring, and it makes sense to me at least because you do have a bigger risk. You're larger, and you do need that. But for, I guess, the general public, the baseline that everyone has to do, it doesn't matter if you're a single personnel company or if you are just large, but if you still qualify for the exemption, this is the baseline that you have to follow. All right, so here is based on our experience, what we went through in the audit and how it works. So when the DFS reaches out, they send it's a big long questionnaire. I don't remember if it's 3 or 4 pages, but it's a long questionnaire with a lot of questions. The one we had was back, they wanted to see 3 years of work. So they wanted to see a risk assessment done every year, and they wanted to see how it improved over time. They want to see like changes in the policy of how that worked. And as well as diagrams from the IT. They wanted to see like just general information, what the IT guy did as far as security in the organization, as well as training. What do people in your organization know about security and how are they staying up to date and things like that. When you go through that questionnaire, you could do it yourself. It's not like I have a license for it or anyone has. It's something that you just have to know the requirements. Anything that you're exempt from and you're exempt, you could just write an A, but it's not, they don't give it to you in a format of like, you're exempt, you don't have to fill out these questions. It's more of like, here's the book, here's a bunch of questions, and now you have to figure it out. So you would have to go through your questions and see what's applicable and what's not. If they are satisfied, you will not hear back from them more or less. If not, they will follow up with more questions. So, and in some cases, they even want to do physical inspection. They will come down. So in my use case that we went through, they did not come down. But I have a client that did have, prior to us helping them, that they had someone there for 2 weeks they had two people sitting in their office working there, just monitoring how they operate. So the DFS is actually pretty on top of it, more than a bunch of other agencies that are not there. Some things that you will need is like your policy and procedures. They will want to see it, and they want to see how you're following it. And a lot of things that you're saying that you're doing, they want to see proof of, screenshots, or just documentation. You did training, I want to see people, I want to see just reports of it. When was it done? What training was done? You know, they go through that full thing. And last but not least, actually, they do look at your cyber insurance plan. They do want to see, you know, that you're covered as well. So again, if we're in an insurance company, I hope we have insurance ourselves. If we're in mortgages, it is highly important to do cyber insurance. It is not a lot of money, and it could save you a lot of headache. But over here, the DFS, it's not a requirement. Again, you could write an A, but at the end of the day, they do want to see something like that. So how to file for the certificate of compliance. So I can post a link to it if needed. Let me see if I can do this. Right, so there is a portal. Let me see if I can do this in the chat. Right, so I posted in the chat. That is the link that where you have to create a login. And as soon as you do that, it's relatively easy of just like uploading it, answering the questions. And you don't have to really supply with like everything that you're doing. When they ask for a risk assessment or policy procedure, it's not like you have to submit it to them. It's only when you have an audit, more or less. But last I checked, like it just going through questionnaires and just submitting that you did the following. Who could submit this? This could be anyone in the company that knows what they're doing, and understands the requirements. It's not something that you have to have a license. It's not something that you are taking responsibility. You are being the representative of the company. So my suggestion would be for someone that could speak for the company in terms of like what was done, and also speak for if in case of an audit, they can speak for the policy and procedures and actually point out like, yeah, this is what we're doing or this is what we're not doing. Um, all right, in case of a breach, it's the similar thing. You go into the same portal and you have to report it. So the DFS wants you to report within 72 hours of discovery. At the end of the day, we do have important data out there and you have to report it. So fun thing about breaches, or not fun thing about it, is that oftentimes we think that, oh, no one's going to know, we're just going to wipe the machines and we can move on. However, some hackers take the data and they just post it on the dark web, and curious people just download it. So sometimes it could come to light, and if the DFS sees like, hey, you were breached and you ignored it, you know, past 72 hours, you could get in trouble for that. Covering up is never a good idea. Always seek legal advice at this point if a breach does occur. There are a bunch of firms out there that would help you like go through it, and it's okay. Most people get breached at some time in their life. It's not okay to just ignore it and just move on. Um, but it's something that you have to work through. With that, I want to conclude. I'm just going to take questions if anyone has anything specific. I think I went through it, but if anyone has anything, Yankee, I see that we have one question. Sure, go ahead. You should be able to speak. You're muted. Your mic is muted, so I am seeing this question. Meanwhile, Yankee, I'm not sure your mic is muted, so I guess if you can figure that out. But in the meantime, limited exemptions, you do not have to have all three. So I'm getting this question. You do not have to have all three exemptions to qualify for it. You could have one of those three. So either under 20 employees collectively, or you're under 7.5 in gross revenue, or under $50 million in assets. So then you do qualify for that. If you want, you can put it in the chat box. Anyone else? Anyone has any questions? Alrighty. Okay. Hold on. Yes, you could. So I'm going to Sal, I'm going to send you the slides as well. I'll send you the recording. And again, if you have any specific questions, please let me know. I'm always here. You guys know where to find me more or less. I appreciate everyone for your time, and I will conclude this. Hold on, we have one more question. And so when it comes to a third party, um, all right, so third-party vendors is a challenge to do the documentation gathering. So the way it's done in most of the compliance out there, and over here would work the same way, would be to have a policy of like what we're looking at. So we should have, in the way we split it, is we want to understand what our third parties handle. So if they're handling important information, we want them to be more strict about our data. So if we're trusting them with our customers' data, they need to like be pretty strict, right? So what we would do is we would send them a questionnaire, and it's called a TPRM, third-party risk management, or basically a third-party questionnaire, and we'd ask them, how do you handle your tech, right? And then we would make a decision based on their answer. So if they tell us like, we don't have insurance, or we don't have security, we don't have a firewall, we don't have an antivirus, and we could decide what those rules are, and then we could make I guess an educated decision on like, is this something that we want to take on as a responsibility, or is this something that we don't want to, like this is something that will would rather put away. So it could be that, or it could be sometimes what we have clients do. It's just an SLA, just having an agreement of like them taking responsibility. That itself is part of the third party. So I hope that answers your question, and I believe you guys could speak up. I'm not sure if it's disabled the mic, but alrighty. Anyone else has any questions? Um, alrighty. So I'm going to conclude this, and if anyone has any questions, we'll take it from there. Thanks everyone for your time. Everyone, I hope this was educational and you learned something today. Um, we'll be in touch. Bye bye.